The champagne glass hit the marble floor at exactly 11:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because that's when Ernest Poarch's entire life changed, and he didn't even know it yet. The sound cut through the orchestral music like a gunshot, and in that frozen moment, a woman in a $10,000 dress was falling backward, her eyes closed, her carefully constructed world collapsing with her. Ernest didn't think. His arms were already moving, catching her mid-fall with the same instinct he used to catch his daughter Maya when she jumped off the swings. The woman's perfume cost more than his monthly rent. Her jewelry could have paid off his student loans. But in that moment, none of it mattered. She was falling, and he was strong enough to catch her. What Ernest didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the woman in his arms was Deanna LaValle, the new chief operating officer of Hartwell Industries, the same company where Ernest mopped floors and emptied trash cans, the same woman who walked past him every morning without ever seeing him. And this single moment of radical human symmetry was about to expose a truth that would shake the foundations of corporate America. The man who cleans up everyone's mess might be the only one qualified to clean up the company itself. Because here's what I find fascinating about this story, and why I need you to stay with me until the end. We live in a world that teaches us to climb, to get higher, to separate ourselves from the people at the bottom. But what happens when the person at the top realizes that the only thing keeping them from hitting the ground is the integrity of the person they've been ignoring for years? Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and it reminds us that hope and second chances are universal languages. The Monday morning after the gala, Ernest was on his knees scrubbing coffee stains from the executive floor carpet when he heard the elevator ding. He didn't look up immediately. Invisible men rarely do. But then he heard the footsteps stop, not slowed down. Stop. Completely. Ernest raised his eyes, and there she was. Deanna LaValle, sober, sharp, terrifyingly alert. She was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and her eyes, those same eyes that had been unfocused and vulnerable 3 nights ago, were now scanning him like a security camera. Their eyes met. And here's what gets me about this moment. Ernest expected her to look away. He expected embarrassment, maybe even anger. Instead, Deanna LaValle nodded. One single nod. Then she stepped into her corner office and closed the door. Ernest went back to scrubbing, but his hands were shaking. That nod wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement. And in Ernest's experience, acknowledgement from powerful people was rarely a good thing. What Ernest didn't know was that Deanna had spent the entire weekend watching security footage from that gala. She'd watched herself stumble. She'd watched Ernest catch her. But more importantly, she'd watched what Ernest did next. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't call for help with a smirk. He simply steadied her, guided her to a chair, brought her water, and then disappeared before anyone with a camera could make her humiliation permanent. And that silent integrity was rarer than any MBA she'd ever encountered. But would Ernest's decency be enough to survive what she was about to offer him? The call came at 2:17 p.m. Ernest was in the basement organizing cleaning supplies when his supervisor handed him a phone with a look that said, "You're either getting fired or something worse." "Mr. Poarch, this is Deanna LaValle's office. She'd like to see you on the 12th floor. Immediately, Ernest's stomach dropped. The 12th floor was executive territory. Janitors only went up there after hours, when the important people had gone home and couldn't be reminded that someone had to clean up after them. 20 minutes later, Ernest stood in Deanna's office, trying not to touch anything. The view behind her desk showed the entire city. a god's-eye perspective that reminded him exactly how far he'd have to fall. Deanna didn't offer him a seat. She slid a folder across her desk instead. "Do you know what this is, Mr. Poarch?" "No, ma'am." "It's a contract. VP of Operations. 6-figure salary. Full benefits. Corner office on this floor." Ernest's brain short-circuited. I don't understand." Deanna leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, Ernest saw something other than ice in her expression. "Let me be very clear about something. This company is rotting from the inside. The board members are more interested in protecting their bonuses than protecting our employees. The executives lie to each other so smoothly they've forgotten what truth sounds like. And I need someone in that boardroom who still remembers the difference." She stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. "You're the only person in this building who didn't look for a camera when I fell. You didn't see an opportunity. You saw a human being. And that, Mr. Poarch, is the rarest commodity in corporate America." Ernest's throat was dry. "With all respect, Ms. LaValle, I don't have a business degree. I don't have experience. I don't." "You have something better." She turned to face him. "You have integrity. And you can't fake that on a resume." Ernest thought about Maya, about the college fund that never seemed to grow fast enough, about the double shifts and the exhaustion, and the dream that maybe, just maybe, she could have a better life than he did. And so he picked up the pen. But as he signed his name, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't joining Deanna's team. He was becoming her shield. And shields historically don't survive the battle. If you are listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I would not even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel by hitting the subscribe button. You can also turn on the notification bell to be updated when a new video is posted. And let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. 3 months into his new position, Ernest Poarch had learned something important. Being promoted doesn't make you less invisible. It just means people ignore you in nicer rooms. But Ernest had also learned to use his invisibility as a weapon. While the other executives performed for each other, Ernest listened, and what he heard made his blood run cold. The scholarship program had been his idea, a fund to send the children of Hartwell's lowest-paid workers to college. Deanna had championed it. The board had approved it. And for 8 weeks, it had been the crown jewel of the company's commitment to social responsibility. Then Ernest found the leak. $73,000. Gone. Transferred out in small increments designed to avoid detection. And the digital trail led directly to an offshore account registered under a shell corporation that shared an address with Deanna LaValle's personal estate attorney. Ernest sat in his office, his corner office with a view he still wasn't used to, and stared at the numbers until they blurred. He'd left his daughter with his mother to work late reviewing these files. He'd sacrificed time he could never get back. And for what? To be the face of another corporate scam? He didn't schedule a meeting. He walked straight into Deanna's office at 7:45 p.m., threw financial reports on her desk, and said the words that would either save his soul or destroy his career. "Tell me I'm wrong." Deanna looked at the papers, then at him. Her face was unreadable. "You're not wrong," she said quietly. Ernest's heart stopped. "The money's gone. $73,000. Siphoned through account designed to hide the source." She stood up, and Ernest saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not shame, not guilt, something else. "So what happens now?" Ernest demanded. "You fire me? Pay me off?" Make me sign another NDA? Deanna walked to her window, the city lights reflecting off the glass. No, Mr. Poarch. I'm going to tell you to keep digging. Ernest felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. What? You heard me. Keep digging. She turned to face him, and her expression was so cold it burned. Because if you stop now, you'll never know the truth. And I think you're the kind of man who needs to know the truth, even when it destroys you. You're setting me up, Ernest said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're making me the fall guy. Deanna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Maybe, or maybe I'm the only person in this building who's telling you the truth. The question is, Mr. Poarch, are you brave enough to find out which one it is? Ernest stood there, the reports crumpled in his fist, his entire body shaking with rage and fear and something else he couldn't name. He thought about Maya, about the college fund he was building with his new salary, about the integrity that had gotten him into this office in the first place. I'll keep digging, he said. I thought you might. Deanna sat back down at her desk. Just remember something, Ernest. The people at the top don't fall unless someone at the bottom is brave enough to stop catching them. And with those words hanging in the air, Ernest walked out, not knowing if he just made the bravest decision of his life or signed his own death warrant. The emergency board meeting was called for a Friday morning. Ernest arrived to find his office had already been cleaned out. His nameplate was gone. His computer access had been revoked. And sitting in the boardroom with satisfied smirks were the same executives he'd been investigating for the past 2 weeks. Mr. Poarch, the chairman said with false sympathy, we've received some disturbing allegations about financial improprieties. We're going to have to ask you to resign, effective immediately. Ernest looked at Deanna. She sat at the far end of the table, her face a mask of professional neutrality. No help was coming from that direction. But here's what those executives had forgotten. Invisible men see everything. And Ernest Poarch had spent 3 months listening to conversations that happened around him like he wasn't even there. Before I resign, Ernest said calmly, I'd like to share what I found when I kept digging. He pulled out his tablet, his personal tablet, not the company one they confiscated, and connected it to the boardroom screen. This is a record of every conversation I overheard while restocking the coffee station. Every off-the-record discussion that happened while I was emptying trash cans. Every backroom deal that was made while you all pretended to help couldn't hear you. The screen lit up with emails, text messages, audio recordings, a complete map of corruption that had nothing to do with the scholarship fund and everything to do with the board members' own embezzlement schemes. You want to fire me for $73,000? Ernest's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. That's fine, but I'm going to make sure the SEC knows about the $4 million you've been hiding in offshore accounts. I'm going to make sure your investors know about the safety violations you buried. And I'm going to make damn sure that when this company goes down, it's not the janitor who takes the fall. The room exploded. Accusations flew. Lawyers were called. And in the chaos, Deanna LaValle finally spoke. Gentlemen, I think it's time we discuss severance packages. For yourselves. 3 hours later, 5 board members had resigned. 2 were facing federal investigations. And Ernest Poarch sat in Deanna's office, emotionally exhausted, watching the sunset over a city that suddenly looked very different. The money, he said quietly, the scholarship fund, where did it really go? Deanna opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. My personal inheritance. I've been liquidating assets to keep the program funded because the board was planning to kill it. They wanted the tax write-off, but they didn't want to actually help anyone. Ernest stared at her. "You let me think you were stealing. I needed to know if you'd do the right thing, even when it meant losing everything." She met his eyes. "Congratulations, Mr. Poarch. You passed." But Ernest didn't feel victorious. He felt tired, because he just learned something that would change him forever. Winning in a corrupt system doesn't make you a hero. It just makes you the person who understands exactly how broken everything really is. Ernest Poarch resigned on a Tuesday morning. No drama. No press conference. Just a simple letter on Deanna's desk that said, "I caught you once. That doesn't mean I have to keep holding on." The severance package would have let him retire early. The stock options would have secured Maya's future through graduate school. But Ernest didn't want any of it, because he'd finally understood what Deanna had been trying to teach him all along. Success isn't about climbing. It's about choosing where you stand. 6 months later, the Poarch School of Practical Integrity opened in the same neighborhood where Ernest had grown up. It wasn't traditional college. It was a trade school that taught plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, and custodial management. But it also taught something else. Every student took a mandatory course called The View from the Bottom, and the guest lecturer who taught it every semester was a former CEO named Deanna LaValle. "Here's what they don't teach you in business school," Deanna told the first class. "They teach you to network up, to forget where you came from, to see the people below you as stepping stones instead of human beings. And that's exactly how systems rot from the inside." She clicked to a photo on the screen. Ernest catching her at that gala, frozen in time. Two people from different worlds connected by a single moment of grace. This man didn't save me because he wanted something from me. He saved me because it was the right thing to do. And when I gave him power, he didn't use it to climb higher. He used it to burn down the ladder that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Ernest watched from the back of the classroom, his daughter Maya sitting beside him, taking notes for her own college essay. She was going to study social work. She wanted to help people who'd been forgotten by systems designed to ignore them. "Dad," Maya whispered, "do you ever regret it? Walking away from all that money?" Ernest thought about the corner office, the view, the power, the invisible man who'd been given a chance to be seen and had chosen instead to make sure others would never be invisible again. "Every single day," he admitted, "but I sleep better now." And that was the truth, because Ernest had learned something that most people never understand. The view from the top is only clear if you remember the integrity of the ground you walked on. Success isn't about how high you climb. It's about whether you're willing to catch people when they fall, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. The real measure of a person isn't what they do when the world is paying attention. It's what they do in invisible moments, when the only witness is their own conscience. And the true tragedy of modern society isn't that we have people at the bottom and people at the top. It's that we build a system that teaches us to forget that both positions are equally human, equally fragile, and equally deserving of dignity. Ernest Poarch was a janitor who became an executive who became a teacher. But the most important thing he ever became was a man who refused to let the world tell him that some people matter more than others. And in a world that profits from inequality, that kind of integrity isn't just revolutionary. It's practically sacred. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comment section if you like part 2 of Ernest and Deanna's story. What challenges will they face building a school that threatens the corporate system? How will they deal with the board members' continued schemes? Let me know if you want to hear more.